Hello, everyone. I'm really excited to have a dear friend of mine, Stefanie, is joining us today for a conversation on restorative rest. Hi, Stefanie.
Hello, Heather. Hello, everyone.
What makes Stefanie unique is the fact not only are we dear friends, but she's also my spiritual director. And I got to go to a retreat where I got to see her in action. And to see her lead a group of people into more contemplative spaces. There's a famous quote by Sumunk Kid that says she was able to leave them alone, but able to stay there with them, but able to leave them alone with their thoughts. And I think Stefanie did such a great job of staying there with us in that space, but leaving us enough alone with our thoughts and gave us the sense of respect. So, Stefanie, I want to just hand it back to you and ask you to share with our listeners, what does it mean to be a spiritual director? What kind of spiritual director are you?
Yeah, that's a great question. One I almost would want you to answer since you're in spiritual direction.
Okay, we'll both answer
it. Yeah, hence what a spiritual director does, I guess, right out of the gate.
Mm-hmm.
No, for me, spiritual direction was something that friends called out in me before I even knew what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And the best description of a spiritual director that I've heard is a spiritual midwife. So it's someone that just comes alongside a fellow journeyer. We're not gurus or sages or have any direct line to God. We're just fellow travelers along the way that are uniquely trained and enjoy holding space for other people as they interact with God's movements in their life. So I hope that the invitation that I get is to just sit alongside of people, maybe ask some curious questions, sometimes some difficult questions, sometimes some light questions, and just help people remind them who they are and walk them home.
I love that. I love how you said walk them home. I think walk them home back to themselves is how I've experienced my time with you. You help walk me home back to me. And my last session is coming to mind as we're talking. And it was an epiphany, a light bulb went on. And I think we both saw it. It had to do with this idea of patience. And it was this awareness I had already had earlier in the morning when I was having some of my morning time. And I was reviewing the fruits of the spirit of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. And I was reviewing those and I kind of got to the word patience and I go, when did that sneak in there? I don't think I've really noticed that patience is part of God's attributes and what the Bible talks about with patience. And that already was a cue that I think was preparing my heart for stepping into a conversation with you, where moving into this last stage of my life is this idea of patience. You picked up on it. My heart was already prepared for it. And then you're going to laugh on this. I took a personality test a couple days later. And one of the things that highlighted is I'm a very fast processor, and it was exceptional. They're like, you're very high on a scale of like 1 to 10. You're like a 10 plus, like we could hardly test you. And I'm like, you're exceptional. And then he goes on to say, however, one of the things you may struggle with is feeling patience with people and their process and their progress. And I just thought, patience. So I want to ask you that. Give our listeners and give me maybe a little bit of idea of what made you zero in on patience as we were talking.
Patience is an interesting thing because I think what it boils down to, none of us like this, but it's control. So part of why we hustle is because we're trying to gain control. We're trying to grip our life in a way that's manageable. And so a lot of us are impatient with the process because of that. I think another thing is that the world is spinning at a really fast pace. And so we aren't built for patience anymore. We're not out gardening anymore where we have to be. Everything is instant gratification to the point that it's shrinking our attention spans. I mean, I love Amazon and 2-day delivery, but when it doesn't come in 2 days, I'm like, oh my gosh, where's my package. So I think we're just starting to train ourselves to be so impatient that even the general slowing down is difficult. So there's the the truth of the fact that the world is spinning and going quicker, and we're losing that tolerance for waiting. And then our world isn't asking for it. So we're not practicing it. So that to me is one of the biggest things with patience is we don't like it because it slows us down and it's something we can't control. And I don't think that our world is set up for us to practice patience. Everything that we're doing, we're trying to get quicker at and more efficient at, and we're losing the art of slowing down, and we're starting to miss things because we're in such a rush to get to the next thing. And so one of the things that I've even suggested to people from time to time is choose the longest line, park far away. Try to see if there are places in your life, if you're in traffic, like instead of getting frustrated about it, what invitations are there in slowing down? And could you intentionally choose to practice waiting or being patient? It almost sounds counterintuitive or countercultural, which is fascinating to me. And so it's no wonder we have trouble slowing down.
I love that. One of the things you've taught me, and I think this is what makes you unique as a spiritual director, which I absolutely love, by the way, is this mind-body connection. For my listeners, when I'll get on the line, one of the things Stefanie does to help me just settle into myself is kind of taking me through a scan of the body is probably the way to say it. And I'll let you explain it more. But what it does is it allows me to slow down and kind of almost return back into my body. And if there's any other Enneagram 3s out there, the personality test, we have a hard time sometimes staying connected to our body. And so having Stefanie guide me into myself, it's really paying attention more to my body first, even if it's 5 minutes. And then you'll say, open your eyes when you're ready. And I'm like, oh, never mind. I just want to go to sleep. It feels so good to finally slow down. But tell us a little bit more about that and how you integrated that in your work and why you do that.
Yeah, well, I'm also a yoga instructor. And so that's part of it. But for me, returning back to God was taking the stuff that I know and dropping it into my heart and into feeling. And I'm an Enneagram 4, so I feel like I live here. And part of why I'm so inspired and encouraged to do it with the clients I work with is because I think it's home to me. It's home base to me. And I know not everyone on the Enneagram that would be true. So I like to do it because I think it's important for us to, what I would say, drop in the pocket, or like a break dancer, when a break dancer's like moving around, going to do their trick. At some point, they just have to drop in. And I feel like when there's so many distractions outside and we're looking at so many different things, to close our eyes and move inward and begin to listen to our bodies. Our bodies have so much to tell us, even to the point where we could sometimes go like a half an hour, 45 minutes, or even a day with our shoulders all tense and tight. And we haven't even recognized our body is in a state of arousal and activation. And so to just drop in and to check in with our bodies. I know sometimes when we do it, we're in the head. What are our thoughts that we've been thinking about? What are the things in the last 48 hours we've smelled or tasted or heard? What have we said? What is something we've been carrying in our heart? How have we been nourishing our bodies into the stomach? And there's just so many places we could take the relationship with how we're actually living and how we're connecting to God and find those places in our bodies. So yeah, slowing down the central nervous system is really important.
Yep. I think that's why I was attracted to you and my work. I needed support. This is almost the shadow side of success. Your world's growing bigger and bigger, and more and more people are connecting. And no one told me about that piece. And so everybody wants the growth, I published a book, my clientele grew, and I was speaking, and I don't think my body was catching up yet with my spirit and my mind. And so bringing you into my life, first of all, I got to meet you at that retreat, which was such a beautiful, just step away from my world. I don't like to even use the word escape because I have a world I don't really want to escape from, but I need a respite. I need a tire swing, to use the terminology of my bracelet. And I think this idea then of stepping away and letting your soul kind of breathe. Wow, what a gift that is. And it's something I need more as I age. But I was also aware of my central nervous system was kind of on overload. And I've been aware of that with trauma in my past, but I don't think I was aware of that with success, if that makes sense. Like, you can even have too much of a good thing where there's a lot of amazing people that want to connect with you and you want to connect with them and you don't want to say no. And you're just trying to keep up with it and you don't see it because you love all these people, but it's almost like your central nervous system is so on fire. That's a term I use. It's on fire. It just feels like it's not getting a time to let down. And I didn't recognize it as much because of all the goodness. I've recognized it in the past with trauma and badness, so to speak, but not with goodness and love. And in learning how to step away from that, it was a new self-discipline for me. I just want to get some of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I work with a lot of successful people and people that run really fast. And I think we get confused. We think rest is something that means that we have to give up or stop. And sometimes we do. But it's more about taking these pockets of rest. If you're thinking, marathon, not sprint, it's important. And we're made to rest. And there's lots of fruit in slowing down our central nervous system and brain and checking the map and being like, am I running towards what I want to be running towards? Are all of these good things good? And how do I pace myself in all of these things so that I'm meeting, my goals and where I feel like God's calling me? And so sometimes it's just good to slow down and rest because our bodies need it physically. Sometimes it's good to slow down because we're getting dry creatively. Sometimes it's good just to have a mental break or even a social break, just to cleanse the palate, so to speak. Other times it's good to just have spiritual respite. I was working with a client today who is really interested in, having a more robust quiet time. And I was like, my suggestion to you is to just for 2 weeks, don't do one.
I love it.
Just start to notice God around you, like recapture the wonder and beauty and mystery. And so, for highly successful people, I think you reach a place of like, okay, I made it. And then you either fall into imposter syndrome or you start to panic. What if the ball, drops? What if the floor drops out from here? And so now what you're doing is trying to maintain this sort of hustle and forget how you even got there or forget that your worth is not tied up in your success. And so these pockets of rest just remind us who's in control and who isn't. And it just reminds us that we were made to not run at a pace that I think all of us are trying to run at.
Yeah. Or being told that we have to run, isn't it?
Totally. Totally. And there's a reason. I mean, there's, whether it's real or imagined, we run for fear. So in order to feel safe, in order to rest, there needs to be trust.
Yeah. Oh man, I speak to that in my book. We cannot let down if we can't trust, and we can't, and where some of the areas that I've really learned that I need to cultivate trust is my own personal decision-making process. I said yes to an event a couple days ago, and I remember walking away and I told my husband later, I said, I'm not mad at them. The event was not something I liked. It was not a fit for me. I'm not mad at them. I'm mad at myself. I knew that this was not a good fit for me. And I said yes anyways. Why? I don't know if it's FOMO. I don't know if it's I just didn't trust myself. I don't know if I needed to just check it out one last time so I can check it off for good. I'm trying not to go down any kind of path of shame for too long, but really understanding that trust piece is critical, trusting yourself, trusting that there is a God that's in control of the path, and that this God is not about hustle. I think about Psalms 23 a lot of the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Many of us has grown up with that Psalms 23 kind of echoing in our soul, and nothing in there is about hustle. Get moving, get going, fight for yourself, feed yourself. It's all about following someone bigger than you and more loving than you. And I've loved how you've brought that to the world, but I wanted to ask you specifically, what are ways that you do pockets of rest? I love that term.
So I let myself off the hook a long time ago with what my mornings needed to look like. And I have a happy list that I keep on my phone of all the things that bring me great joy. They're all these little things. They're smells and sounds and laughter of people I love. And when I wake up, and I used to beat myself up and say, I have to wake up at 5 a.m. and write and drink hot water with lemon. I had a long list of a color-coded Excel spreadsheet. And I just realized I'm going to carve as much time as I have for that morning. I'm going to be meandering with my time. I'm going to wake up and be slow and gentle. I'm probably the worst person. You'll never hear this probably from another spiritual director. I scroll through Instagram every morning in bed and I love it. And the reason that I do it is because I'm half awake. And it is the only time I enjoy doing it because it's mindless and it makes my eyes wake up. And then I get up and I do my coffee and I read. And sometimes it's yoga and sometimes it's a hike and sometimes it's prayer and sometimes it's staring off in space and just putting my face into the sunshine. And so I try to find pockets throughout my day of wonder and awe and where I can just look around at the world I live in and go, yes. And to me, that is what reminds me who I am. And that's what brings me rest. And so the more that I can rest in who God created me to be and who God is, the more expansiveness, the more permission, the more freedom I have to enjoy life.
Okay, something you said about your pockets of rest and your morning time. Man, I love that you said that. Everything from the Instagram piece to just seeing where almost what your soul needs and your body needs that day, which I totally love. As a coach, I say the same thing about morning time. How you start your day makes all the difference. And then I think people get ready for me to list some formula. And I go, no. It's about what is your soul hungry for that morning? Is it to stare off in space? Is it to take a stroll around the neighborhood? Is it to scroll through your Instagram and kind of just wake your mind up a little bit? What is it your body needs and your mind and soul need? And seeing yourself holistically. Speak to us a little bit more about morning time and what that can look like that really gives your soul a chance to rest.
Yeah. For me, it's leaning in and listening and being really gracious and patient with myself. So, the most important thing to do for myself is not to wake up hating myself and to already beat myself up before I even get out of bed. So that's what I would do is I would shame myself for hitting the snooze button and, for not getting up and spending, what spiritual director doesn't spend an hour in scripture every morning? And, and so I was believing other people's expectations of me instead of listening to what I needed. And it's really interesting because I think some people are really fearful of this concept of leaning in and listening. But I have a lot of scripture in my heart that I don't know if I've lived out completely. So I'm not worried about getting enough. I'm worried about living out what I know. And so for me, it's like slowing down, being like, okay, Stefanie, what's here in front of you? What is a baby step you can take in the morning to be as congruent as you can be, where your insides and your outsides match? And instead of beating yourself up or telling yourself you need to do this dry, empty, quiet time because that's what you learned 20 years ago from some sort of mentor or church guy, that I don't think that Jesus is after that. For me, it's more like he wants me. He wants my truth. He wants my honesty and my body and my time and my attention. And sometimes that's sitting down and reading God's word, but a lot of times it's just asking where he is in the world that I live in and taking this scripture and truth that's written on my heart from all of those years that my quiet time did look like that and let those ebb and flow. I think we've just beat ourselves up too much. And I think we're scared to trust ourselves and then we don't even know how to get quiet. And then when we get quiet, we don't even know how to listen. And that's what I do as a spiritual director is I help people build the framework for listening so that they can apply it throughout their life.
Gosh, I love that. I'm jotting that down. I love that so much. Build the framework for listening. That's definitely what you've done for me. And it goes back to that connection of we can't rest unless we trust. Trust that we have something going on inside us. Trust that we can listen to ourselves. Trust that what we're saying holds truth. I mean, all of this process to just slow down. And I think in your role as a spiritual director, and probably my role as a coach, we can both speak to this. Sometimes the pressure to have something wise to offer. Reality. I mean, one of the most humbling things is to say, man, it's not about you. You just need to have that space and ask the question and help, not just help them, but let them come to the conclusion on their own. And it's not your job to come up with an answer. It's not your job to fix anything. It's not your job to have a solution. It's just your job to keep reminding them that they have the answers within them. And how do we draw them out?
I totally believe that. Like when we're sitting across from each other, I'm not thinking, wow, Heather's come to me for some answers because you're so darn smart. What I'm thinking to myself is that Heather knows exactly what she needs. And I'm just here to be a mirror. I'm just here to remind her. I'm just here to let her know she's got it and she can do it. And sometimes what we need is just a companion on the journey to go, yep, I see that. And, 3 sessions ago, when you said this, I'm reminding you who you are. And so that's the beauty, I think, of the work that we do both as coaches and spiritual directors. We just come alongside of people and say, you're not alone in this. This is who you are. And I'm gonna hold the space so you can hear from yourself and then know that that is good. And we all need it. I mean, that's why you meet with people. That's why I meet with people personally, is because we believe in the work that we do. I like to say we do our work both alone and together. And so to have that happening in relationship feels really important.
Oh, well said. Well said. Makes me think of another quote. I usually don't remember quotes this much. For some reason, I'm remembering quotes today. Parker Palmer, one of my favorite philosophers, he wrote the book, A Hidden Wholeness. And I never forgot this quote. It's probably 30 years ago. I read the book, and he said, we need spaces within us and spaces between us that welcomes the wisdom of the soul. And I think learning how to have that space within, which is listening to yourself and trusting yourself, and then learning how to have that space between, which is talking with other people that help you listen to yourself. That's the gift that I think we could give one another in this world, and be able to say, I'm here with you as I help you honor your space within. And that's what our space between gets to look like. It gets to look like a space between us that respects that each of us is working really hard to listen to ourselves and where we're being led.
Yeah. And isn't it beautiful that when we do our own work, when we say yes to those hard parts in our story, or when we make space to listen, or when we take time to slow down, we do that so that we're better for the people that we love and lead. So it's, a lot of people will say, well, I can't rest because that's selfish, or I can't get a coach because that's selfish. And I would say, it's actually more selfish not to, because what you're doing is you're going to the people that you're loving and leading, and you're expecting them to meet your needs.
Mm-hmm.
And so it would be way better to invest in an hour of therapy, coaching, spiritual direction. It'd be way better to sit down and take the time you need to take care of your own work. And then from that place, we're going to relate to people way better. I'm a way better mom when I take care of myself. I'm a way better wife when I'm doing my own work. And so it's so interesting to me. People will come on retreat all the time and they'll say, I just thought this was selfish. I'm like, how is it selfish to take 40 hours to get away, to turn down the volume, to do a hard reset? So you're recharged, re-energized to get back into the world from a healthier place. That sounds like the greatest gift you can give to people. So talk about ROI. It's like the more that we do that kind of introspective work, the more we're going to see dividends pay off throughout our whole entire life, from business ventures into personal life. And that's what we really want.
Yeah. I just wish you lived closer. I'd be skipping over there every month because I don't see it as selfish as all. I see it as lifeline. I see it as critical for my work. And I've referred many people over to the Oaks, which is just a very unique center. I don't know, you could probably describe it more, but the contemplative rest that I felt when I would go on there, and the energized rest, both of them just beautifully. It's not like you're worn out, and it's also not like you're not stimulated either. There's just such a beautiful mix between what I call restorative rest.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the goal, is that, and nothing against, other types of retreats, but what we're trying to create here is just this ability to rest deeply, but have fun, and also just normalize having intentional conversation. I think that's what people are so blown away by, is that they just aren't sitting around many dining room tables or living rooms in communities of people with this kind of intention, is to say, who is it that you want to become, and who is it that you were, and what makes you come alive, and what brings you joy, and what's holding you back, and what's keeping you stuck. And it's just like sitting around having those conversations where we can be dreamers and creators and find our unique fingerprint in the world. And then to be like encouraged in that space and championed in that space. And sometimes it's just, I've watched so many people just whisper out something that's on their heart. And in that whispering, they were met with love. It's just such a powerful place to be, is when you're seen and heard and loved from some of your most vulnerable places, and then you're accepted in that place.
Oh, well said.
Like, what a gift we can give to people. And so here we are in this world, we're trying to find it in success. We're trying to hustle or run. We're trying to live in this constant state of arousal or proving ourselves, whether it's stress or trauma that's keeping us activated. And what would it look like if we just like let down, took a big, deep breath, believed truly that God was in control, and that we were just co-creating this whole thing with him, that he was inviting us into this grand story of wonder and awe and rest, because it's good.
It's beautiful. So who is God to you, Stefanie?
Ooh, big question, Heather.
It is. It's a big one. It's kind of a spiritual direction question, I think.
It is. I know. I'm rubbing off on you. No, for me, God is everything. I mean, he is really a true companion. I believe God is mother to me, in all of the most feminine ways. I believe that it is why I'm here, is to co-create with God. I remember I wasn't raised in a Christian home. And I just remember all my interactions in the beginning of meeting with God were very sweet and very innocent. And I think that has moved with me throughout my years, both on church staff and then away, that we've just always had this sweet friendship and intimacy and connection. God is mystery. God is bigger than I am. God is everything that I'm hoping God is, and God is love. And so, I feel like we have to get to the understanding of us being loved by the God of the universe far before we can understand what suffering is, what lament is, what grief is, what delayed gratification is, what surrender is. Like when you talk about trust and safety, to me, it's like we have to understand that we are loved first before we can hand over the things that we love the most. Before we can turn our children over to the Lord, we have to go, do I trust him? Does he love me? Because if you aren't to a place where you understand God's love for you, how in the world can you do those things? And I'm so glad that there are parts of God that I just don't understand. I hope I will always be a learner of God, and I take full rest in the mystery of God.
It's beautiful.
Because that's who I want God to be. I don't want to be able to figure out God.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well said. Me neither. Nor do I want anyone to figure it out for me.
No.
What would you say to those who have been either hurt or scarred by who they either have been told God is or who they think God is? What would you say to those people?
I'm deeply sorry. And then I'd probably pause a really long time.
Yeah.
And then I would hope that my love and who I am as a human would just open them up to the curiosity of, could that be different? And to maybe reimagine the story. Because everybody has someone that they could say reminds them of love. And so if we could start at love and work backwards, I think that to me is the truest way to get to God. That's how we see Jesus working in the Bible. Like, he didn't walk around just throwing Bible verses at people. He said, what do you need? What do you want? He went up to a blind person and said, what do you want? Well, of course he knows. He knows. But what he wants more is a relationship, a dialogue. And so, to me, somebody that's been hurt, I'd say, I'm sorry. I'd pause a long time. And then I'd say, me too. That everybody has somewhere that they could probably point to in their life where they had to make a decision that something bad happened. So is God who he says he is? I don't know. Let's go look.
Yeah.
Let's go find out how something really terrible can happen in your life and God can still be love. Like, let's sit in that, because there's no easy answer. There is not 3 things that begin with Q that you could say to someone that has been hurt. So I mean, I think it's a fantastic question. I also think it would take so much time to hold space for that.
Where is God in suffering?
In it.
Right in the middle of it, huh? Where have you found God in your suffering?
Yeah, right aside me in my very breath, carrying me, shepherding me, beside me, in front of me. Our story has a large, heavy piece of grief in it. We have 3 children. We lost our older 2. They've passed away from a rare terminal genetic disorder. And so my son was 11. And then my daughter, 9 months later, passed away. We lived 10 years caregiving with them. So where was he? Right there. Right there. He didn't fall asleep either on the job when he was making my kids in my womb. God didn't make a mistake. He gave me 2 of the most beautiful reflections of his glory. They just also happened to have a rare terminal genetic disorder. So they wouldn't be with us for a long time. But he was with me in every moment. He was even with me when I couldn't see him. when I couldn't feel him, when it felt really dark, when death was literally knocking on my door. In fact, when that happened, God was there even more. I could see him as my daughter took her last breath. So it was like, it's always joy and pain in the same place. And I know death sting. I have seen it. I have carried my children out of my house. I know death, and to me, it's like every time I choose joy, I kind of say, and I don't know, you can edit this one out, but I'm like, F you, death. like you think that you are going to sit here and steal my joy? I refuse. I refuse. When my kids died, I wondered, would I ever laugh again? And I did. And I will continue to, and I will hold joy and pain every day of my life. I do not ignore my pain. I carry it right alongside of my joy, and my joy is all the richer because I know pain, and my pain is all the richer because I know joy, and God is in both.
That's beautiful. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That is sacred territory. I don't even want to touch it, Steph.
Yeah. And that's what we do, Heather. And we bear witness. And you don't have to give me an answer or an accolade or anything. It's just for you to say, wow, that was sacred. And what if we moved in this world more in that posture?
Yeah.
Is when things happen or people share their stories or their pain or their joy, we go, wow. Yeah, that's sacred.
Yeah. Yeah. It was beautiful. For my listeners, you can see why I work with Stefanie. She has been through it. And I think it's heroic of you, Stefanie, that you have chosen to look suffering square in the eyes and dare to have joy, and dare yourself to even just feel the depth of the suffering. It doesn't feel like one was sacrificed for the other. And your ability to integrate that is heroic. I believe that's the imago Dei, the image of God that each of us hold. God is constantly both, in the pain and in the suffering.
Yeah.
What, this is going to be a hard question, and we're going to start wrapping up, but I do want to delve just one more deeper here. I believe we always have a choice, and it's sometimes a nanosecond. But when we feel assaulted by this world and the violence that does to our soul, especially for those of us who have highly sensitive, high EQs, where we can feel everything, and we're the ones that can hardly watch the news sometimes, just things like that. I'm thinking about a lot of my highly sensitive people, and myself included. What made you choose? What made you so securely rooted in in being cognizant of the fact you had a choice to not let it take you out? You see what I'm kind of asking? Because it's a deep question. And I think in the work that I do, I think it's dawning on me that humanity does not realize they have a choice. Suffering happens, it takes them out, or bitterness incurs, or withdrawal, or avoidance, or we build a wall around it and make sure that it never gets touched again. What made you choose to simultaneously give it a hug and tell it to F off at the same time? I mean, I just love that about you. You had that ability to do both.
I wish I had an easy answer. The first thing that came to mind is to stay open. I think C.S. Lewis says to love is to be vulnerable. And so if you want to protect yourself, put your heart in a box and lock it, but it will die in there. And so the best example I can give is my kids, is that as their body would change, God became all the more visible because they didn't see people and they didn't see the world the way that everybody else did. So if you took the chance to lean in and look beyond their physical disability, what you would see is this radiant, pure, beautiful joy. And so I couldn't separate the two, because when I look in the face of my son or my daughter, it was both their disability and their beauty and their sacredness. So I couldn't pull them apart. They were contained in their face. And so in order to accept one, I had to accept the other in terms of how I lived. And so my faith to me was in the not yet, and God being for real in Revelation when he says, there will be a day. Like, this is just the middle of the story. There will be a day where there's no more death and no more sorrow and no more pain. So I am both present to what's in front of me, trusting what's beyond me. So that was what grounded me. And in terms of choice, I feel like every little nanosecond we have a choice, but it's not so much a choice to like buck up. A lot of my choices look like laying down in surrender.
Yeah, well said.
A lot of my choices look like laying down and crying and being like, this is too big for me. I hate when people say God never gives you more than you can handle, because every single day of pushing 2 wheelchairs, knowing my kids were going to die, felt like too much to handle.
Yeah.
What I kept saying is that there is a God that's bigger than me, that's handling it behind the scenes. And I don't know how he's handling it. Sure doesn't look like he's handling it, but I'm going to trust that he's handling it, and not according to what I want, but according to his will. And that's different. And so to me, it's about practicing. It's about going, okay, God, I can't see you, but I'm going to trust you with this day. I can't see you, but I'm going to trust you at this moment. I can't see you, but this feels really horrible. And it's not in the results of that. It's in the relationship I'm building every time I say, I don't know what's going on, but I trust you. It's like when a little kid just kind of hands you their hand and says, I trust you. Like, walk me across the street. I trust you. Mommy, pick me up. Like, they might have done something terrible, but they still want you to hold them. And it's that. It's like, can we posture ourselves in a way where the world will continue to assault us? The world will continue to give us bad news. So yes, we boundary and protect ourselves as best as we can, but we keep our boundaries porous. Because we can't filter out the sorrow, because if you want joy, you're going to get sorrow. And if you want sorrow, you're going to get joy. They just can't be separated, like my children's face. So if you're going to choose one, you've got to choose the other.
That's beautiful. I think I like that you said that, because I think that's what we're trying to do. And then we wonder why we're struggling at such deeper levels, and we're trying to extricate. I don't want the joy, but I don't want the suffering.
Doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work that way. And yet many of us live in denial. You talk about hustle. I love that you keep mentioning that, because that is just powerful. And I work with people who are constantly hustling. I'm constantly saying, just slow down for 30 to 45 minutes. Let's just pull it together for a little bit and like just breathe. And therein will come your clarity. When you spoke to this idea of pain and joy, suffering and happiness, there's this desire for us to want to separate it out and say, I only want one without the other. And you're right, it doesn't work that way. But more importantly, it's not how we're wired as humans. It's not the presence or the spirit of who our creator is or who God is. God has created us to hold all of that. And that's the beauty of learning how to do that. Where we truly suffer is when we try and pull it apart and say, I only want one without the other. And that's where I think we scar ourselves so much in that process, because we want to hustle around the suffering. We want to hustle around the issue. We want to just get back to the joy again and get back to the good emotions. I think one of the just beautiful truths you said, and I believe it in my heart as well, is if you want deep joy and contentment in life, you're going to have to embrace deep sorrow and sadness. And neither one will you get stuck in. You're not going to be Pollyanna, rainbows and unicorn person. And you're also not going to be despair person. And I have to say that a lot to people, because they're fearful that if they really give honor to one when they're pulling the other way, they're afraid they're going to get stuck in one or the other. The beauty of us maturing, and as we age, and even as we partner with God in this world, is being able to hold both so gracefully.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think the more that we try to sanitize ourselves away from death or pain or sorrow, we forget the natural rhythms that we have been born into with the life, death, life cycles. It happens in our workplace, in our dreams. It happens in our life. We birth babies and we bury parents, and we hope it goes in that order, but it doesn't always. And the truth of the matter is, if we open our hands to the rhythms of life, we will see that it happens in gardening. We plant seeds, they break and die, they bring new life. We see it in the cross. We had a God who had to die to bring new life. But I also think that if you look at who we were made to be, written on our first kind of name was beloved, and it was Garden of Eden. It was paradise. It didn't probably have the suffering that we know now, and it won't to come. And so the idea is that this is just the not yet, where those two things are married. And I think the reason our hearts so don't like that and we fight for just joy is probably because that's like our native language is God's love without death and sorrow and pain. And so it's that eternal longing in us that keeps calling back to us, saying it shouldn't be this way. It shouldn't be this way. And so when we think about embracing it, I wouldn't say we embrace it because we welcome it with love, so to speak, as much as it is, we say, oh, God is here too. That God is even here too. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to like sift those, because we're thinking that's all bad and that's all good, but we can't quite do that here. But I do believe there may come a time where God takes care of the sifting, that who we were, that native cry for goodness is still in us and will be honored. So perhaps maybe that's where the tension comes from. And I don't know. I'm just curious about those things. So maybe I don't have any answers, but.
I think part of the answer is sitting in the question. And I think you do that so well. And you help me do that, because if we try and answer it, we make our lives very small. But I think learn how to sit in questions and stay in that and not feel that temptation to keep reaching for resolve is part of our maturing process that allows our world to grow and allows our soul to expand and take in more.
I always say it's questions just lead to deeper questions.
Yeah.
And that I like to say it's like a downward spiral staircase instead of an ascending. We always think of success as ascending, and I like to think of it as descending, that we get to deeper places. So we're going to bump up against these questions over and over and over again. Who are you in junior high, or when you're 20 is going to be way different than when you're 30 or when you're 40. And so the questions don't change. You do. And you get to deeper places and deeper knowings. And if we refuse to start the journey of descending down, we will continue to circle up on these upper levels, trying to chase wealth and success and all of this stuff. And it's not that those things are bad. It's that when we chase them to fill those deeper questions is when we get in trouble. if we're loving and leading from that place of congruency, and we also happen to have wealth and success, great. But it's not worth gaining the whole world, right? And losing our souls. So we've got to tend to those restful places in our hearts, so we can cultivate a beautiful place of activity from a place of health.
Beautiful. Gosh, Stephanie, it's been such a pleasure. I feel like we could talk hours.
Always. I know.
As we wrap up, I guess I want to ask you, just to leave our listeners, what encouragement would you give them?
Yeah, that you're worth taking time. Your life is worth paying attention to, that there are clues all around you, and slowing down, turning the decibels. It can be as simple as just returning to your breath. It could be as simple as going outside and noticing a sunset or a sunrise. It could be an afternoon when you're driving in your car and you get to a stoplight and you just notice the sun radiating through the car window and you go, that's good. It's just noticing the faces of the suffering, because suffering is just loving. So the reason it hurts so bad is because you love it, or somebody hurt you, right? So it's just to think about taking those tiny little things in our life and finding awareness and gratitude. And I think everybody has that, whether you're a single mom, a special needs mom, a business, woman, wherever you are in the journey of labels, we all have the ability to just stop and have these small little pauses that remind us who God is and who we are, and that's enough. That's just enough. And whatever comes after that is what it is.
That's beautiful. All right, listeners, be kind to yourself. Be so very tender with your soul. Steffi and I both are aware of the hustle that you've had to do, required to do, been told you have to do, or even telling yourself to do. And I think we're taking a stand against the hustle and saying, give yourself the love, the respect, the value, and the courtesy to just slow down, listen to your thoughts, listen to the voice on the wind is whispering to you, and know that you get to step into that life today, in this moment, right now. You don't have to wait. I love Stephanie's simple ideas of honoring the morning time, the changing of the seasons, the sun coming up and down, the happy thoughts or the happy list on her phone that she keeps. These are all really practical ways to stay very connected to your soul and allowing it to continuously be fed throughout the day. So we are cheering you on and thinking of you and grateful for each of you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome. Thanks for joining us today. We'd love a review. Helps us out quite a bit. Wherever you are, just drop a review, and you can find out more at heatherpenny.com. Cheering you on.